All right. We got one viewer here. Who are you? Oh, then they just leave? Get real. Come on, people. It's fantastic. Show up just to see that it's happening. Um, so how is everything in your life, in your world? Any news or updates about school? Hello, Natalie. Welcome back. I think you were not here yesterday. Is Kenna awake yet? Somebody sent her a message. Let her know that she should show up. That's not a knock. I mean, she wants to sleep till noon. That's fine. Does anybody have any updates about school? I've been looking. I haven't seen where the governor has made any announcements yet. I don't know. Has your school made any announcements about the future of your classes? Also, I think right now I'm just looking up HLV's website, see if it says anything about, it has not updated at all. We know nothing, Stacy says. Excellent. Let's move the Zoom thing to Monday night. Okay, we're gonna do that hopefully Monday night. Hopefully there's some good news there about you going back to this. That'll be your last week. Hopefully next week is your last week and everything. Not to get your hopes up or anything, but just hopefully that's the case. Yeah, welcome back to my office. Yesterday I was back in my apartment, and I don't know if you noticed this or not because of the lighting, but my bedroom, not my bedroom, that bedroom specifically is purple because it used to be a child's nursery room. So it's kind of funny. It's my apartment. I'm not allowed to. I don't own it, so I can't paint it a different color. So purple is what it is. And Nick 81. Who is your name? Ryan? Or are you saying hello to a person named Ryan? Not guessing here who and Nick 81 is. Did you give us your full name? Andrew Nickerson. Gotcha. All right. My brother-in-law is here, and someone else just dropped out. Excellent. Well, welcome, Andrew, to our Daily Devo. Maybe you're just popping in to say hello. I don't know. So you know nothing about school. What are you doing today? Got any big plans? Anything like that going on? I mean, obviously, Tacey, you heard that EIBC is not having camp for June, so you will not be able to work at camp, at least as a counselor in June. That is an answer to some of your prayer requests, I guess. Natalie said she's cleaning. Excellent. It's good. Jordan Nickerson. Who's Jordan Nickerson? I don't. Okay. All right. Well, let's get started because the chapter today is kind of long, and I do kind of want to read through most, if not all of it. It's about 40 verses, and it's in Daniel chapter 3. Sorry, Daniel chapter 4. We just lost everybody. That's fantastic. So Daniel chapter 4 obviously is after Daniel chapters 1, 2, and 3. What is being set up, what we've talked about over the last couple, I don't want to rehash everything that we talked about. You can go back and watch those videos if you want, but obviously it's the start of Daniel and his friends, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego to most people. And just obviously you've got the beginning of them becoming magicians, magi, wise men, whatever you want to call them. Again, not wizards. Chapter 2 is Nebuchadnezzar's dream. Daniel is able to interpret it, save all the other magi's lives because he can interpret it. And then he and his 3 friends get promoted to higher end jobs or whatever in that field. And then chapter 3, you see Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego being thrown into the fire furnace. God saves them. And at the end of that passage, Do you believe in coincidences? Do you believe that things just happen for no reason, or whatever? Or do you believe that there is a plan that's in place? Whether this happens, whether chapter 4 and chapter 3 are closely related as far as time is concerned, I don't know. But I do know that they're related in the relationship that it has to do with Nebuchadnezzar and his, I believe, faith journey. Because at the end of chapter 3, after seeing Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego rescued from the fiery furnace, he threw down the gauntlet. No God can rescue you. They say our God can rescue us. God does rescue them. Then at the end of that, Nebuchadnezzar says, your God is great. Anybody who insults them will be cut into pieces and their house will be burned. Again, not a great dude. From that standpoint, Tacey does not believe in coincidence. That's good. That's good. And so then we have chapter 4 of Daniel. And it's an interesting chapter because one of the great things about this chapter, again, is you see Nebuchadnezzar's faith coming to life, if you will. You see him share his testimony, and you might say, wait a minute, like who has written the Bible? Now, depending on who you're talking to, 35, 40, we're not sure on the exact number of people who've written the Bible. But you would say, well, all of them are believers, right? Well, Daniel chapter 4, the whole book of Daniel is written by Daniel, but Daniel chapter 4 specifically is written by Nebuchadnezzar himself. And so I would also agree that probably all of the Bible is written by believers. And so that lends me to think that I'm going to see Nebuchadnezzar in heaven someday. And we got to see in Daniel 1, 2, 3, and now in 4, the stages of Nebuchadnezzar's faith or his faith journey or how he got, in a sense, saved. And it's amazing because, again, he's the kind of guy that chops people up into pieces and burns their houses down. And so Daniel chapter 4 is one of those amazing chapters that we kind of probably skim over a lot of times, but we shouldn't because of how it gives God glory from a guy named Nebuchadnezzar. So let's start reading. It says, King Nebuchadnezzar sent this message to the people of every race and nation and language throughout the world. Peace and prosperity to you. I want you all to know about the miraculous signs and wonders the Most High God has performed for me. How great are his signs, how powerful his wonders. His kingdom will last forever, his rule through all generations. Verse 4, I, Nebuchadnezzar, was living in my palace in comfort and prosperity. But one night I had a dream that frightened me. I saw visions that terrified me as I lay in my bed. Now let's stop there for a second. Let's again, real quickly here. The first couple of verses is Nebuchadnezzar. He's starting his testimony, and his testimony is this message that goes out literally to the entire his whole kingdom, right? All these people in groups in his kingdom. He sends this message out proclaiming how great God is, not how great he is, but how great God is. And at the beginning of this, that's impressive in and of itself. But as you read the story, you'll understand how big of a deal that is because he is a proud king, and his pride got him, cost him a lot. And so for him to humble himself and then exalt God above him, above everything else, is a huge, huge moment. Again, one of the reasons why I think maybe Nebuchadnezzar is going to be in heaven and I'll be able to see him someday and ask him any question I want. So starting back up in verse 6, it says, So I issued an order calling in all the wise men of Babylon. This is after he's had this terrifying dream. So they could tell me what my dream meant. When all the magicians, enchanters, astrologers, and fortune tellers came in, I told them the dream, but they could not tell me what it meant. At last, Daniel came in before me. I told him the dream. His name is Belshazzar, after my God, and the spirit of the holy gods is in him. I said to him, Belshazzar, chief of the magicians, I know that the spirit of the holy gods is in you, and that no mystery is too great for you to solve. Now tell me what my dream means. While I was laying in bed, this is what I dreamed. I saw a large tree in the middle of the earth. The tree grew very tall and strong, reaching into the high heavens for all the world to see. It had fresh green leaves, and it was loaded with fruit for all to eat. Wild animals lived in its shade. Birds nested in its branches. All the world was fed from this tree. Then as I lay there dreaming, I saw a messenger, a holy one, coming down from heaven. The messenger shouted, Cut down the tree, lop off its branches, shake off its leaves, and scatter its fruit. Chase the wild animals from its shade, and the birds from the branches. But leave the stump and the roots in the ground, bound with a band of iron and bronze, and surrounded by tender grass. Now let him be drenched with the dew of heaven, and let him live with the wild animals among the plants in the field for 7 periods of time. Let him have the mind of a wild animal instead of the mind of a human. For this has been decreed by the messengers, it is commanded by the Holy One, so that everyone may know that the Most High rules over the kingdoms of the world. He gives them to anyone he chooses, even its lowliest people. Belshazzar, that was the dream that I, King Nebuchadnezzar, had. Now tell me what it means, for none of the wise men of my kingdom can do so. But you can tell me because the spirit of the holy gods is in you. And so Daniel, at this point, told the dream and is now about to tell Nebuchadnezzar what it means. He's desperate. Nebuchadnezzar is desperate. He's afraid. It's terrifying. It's a nightmare to him. Daniel, and Daniel has to be a bearer of bad news here. Sometimes we're terrified of of something we don't know, but when we start to understand it, it becomes even more terrifying. Sometimes knowing doesn't really assure us or give us comfort. Okay, so anyways, verse 19 says, upon hearing this, Daniel, also known as Belshazzar, was overcome for a time, frightened by the meaning of the dream. Then the king said to him, Belshazzar, don't be alarmed by the dream and what it means. So he's encouraging Daniel at this point. Daniel is so freaked out that Nebuchadnezzar has to encourage him. Belshazzar replied, I wish the events foreshadowed in this dream would happen to your enemies, my lord, and not to you. The tree you saw was growing very tall and strong, reaching high into the heavens for all the world to see. It had fresh green leaves and was loaded with fruit for all to eat. Wild animals lived in its shade, and the birds nested in its branches. The tree, your majesty, is you, for you have grown strong and great. Your greatness reaches up to heaven, and your rule to the ends of the earth. Then you saw a messenger, a holy one, coming down from heaven and saying, cut down the tree and destroy it, but leave the stump and the roots in the ground, bound with a band of iron and bronze, and surrounded by tender grass. Let him be drenched with the dew of heaven. Let him live with the animals of the field for 7 periods of time. This is what the dream means, your majesty, and what the Most High has declared will happen to the Lord the King. You will be driven from human society, and you will live in the fields with the wild animals. You will eat grass like a cow. You will be drenched with the dew of heaven. 7 periods of time will pass while you live this way, until you learn what the Most High rules over the kingdoms of the world and gives them to anyone he chooses. But the stump and the roots of the tree were left in the ground. This means that you will receive your kingdom back again when you have learned that heaven rules. King Nebuchadnezzar, please accept my advice. Stop sinning and do what is right. Break from your wicked past and be merciful to the poor. Perhaps then you will continue to prosper. So Daniel tells Nebuchadnezzar that the tree is him, and when it gets cut down, that's you getting cut down and it says 7 periods of 7, which is just 7 years. For 7 years, he's going to be taken out. He's going to be living like a wild animal. That's what the thing is. And Daniel gives him a real quick, and obviously I would say that not only just is it prophetic in the sense that God's telling him what's going to happen in the future, but it's a warning to him. Kind of like with Jonah, who comes in and says, Nineveh, you have 40 days and you're going to be destroyed. That was a warning, a prophetic warning, but it never happened because they repented. And so Daniel tells Nebuchadnezzar, please repent. Please, he says here, give up your wickedness and treat the poor well. And so there's a chance that Nebuchadnezzar could learn his lesson from the warning, not from the actual discipline that's coming for him. And I think that's true for all of us. That God's word is obviously a warning to all of us about the effects of our sin, what we do when if we sin, this can happen to us. The consequences are this, and ultimately we can learn from the warning before we actually experience it. And I would encourage you guys to learn from that warning. Seek, what God's trying to say to you in the Bible and from other people's mistakes that are written in the Bible, rather than waiting for it to happen to you. In fact, one of those warnings is from Nebuchadnezzar here in Daniel chapter 4, that he had to go through this And he's warning us in a sense, saying how great God is. He does keep his promises. That, you know, if he says he's going to do something, he's going to do it, does it. So anyways, verse 28, continuing. But all these things did happen to King Nebuchadnezzar. 12 months later, a year later. So for a year, either, you know, he was trying to do what's right and doing it, but 12 months later, he was taking a walk on the flat roof of the royal palace in Babylon. As he looked out across the city, he said, "Look at this great city of Babylon. By my own mighty power, I have built this beautiful city as my royal residence to display my majestic splendor." While these words were still in his mouth, a voice called down from heaven, "O King Nebuchadnezzar, this message is for you. You are no longer ruler of this kingdom. You will be driven from human society. You will live in the fields with the wild animals, and you'll eat grass like a cow. 7 periods of time will pass while you live this way until you learn that the Most High rules over the kingdoms of the world and gives them to anyone he chooses." That same hour, the judgment was fulfilled, and Nebuchadnezzar was driven from human society. He ate grass like a cow, and he was drenched with dew of heaven. He lived this way until his hair was as long as eagle's feathers, and his nails were like birds' claws. So, the reason why I titled this this video "Grizzly Adams Did Have a Beard" is Grizzly Adams was this wild man. It was a TV show about this dude who lives out, has a bear as a pet, and you know, he kind of looked gruffy. You know, he had long hair, long beard, whatever, because he lived out in the woods. And it's kind of like what Nebuchadnezzar is. He's the original Grizzly Adams. Only he, instead of looking just like an animal with, you know, long hair and a beard, and he had weird, nasty, like, fingernails that were too long, and he ate grass like he became an animal, a cow specifically. He thought that's what he was. He acted like an animal because he stood out on his balcony and he said, "I am awesome. I am great. Look at everything that I have built." And you know what? Babylon was an amazing city. Babylon was a great city, and King Nebuchadnezzar did have a lot of power. But he should not have been so proud as to say, "I did this apart from God. I had the ability. Nobody just gave this to me." Now, when you look at a house, you look at a tree, it's automatic. Yeah, that's nature. God obviously did that. When you look at a house, you go, well, I mean, somebody built that. Some, you know, people got together with some hammers, some tools, and they got some wood, and they built a house, right? And they could stand there and go, yeah, I mean, I built that. And you could say, yeah, that guy over there built that, or those guys over there built that. But ultimately, the lesson that I think God is trying to show obviously, is that it he lived this way until his hair was as long. No, where is it here? 7 periods of time will pass while you live this way until you learn that the Most High rules over the kingdoms of the world and gives them to anyone he chooses. For 7 years he lives this way until the messenger says, "Nebuchadnezzar, you realize that this was given to you by God. You didn't build that. It wasn't your creation. God has blessed this to you and given it to you. And while human hands have built the city of Babylon, again, maybe the most beautiful city ever in the history of the world, it was given to him by God ultimately." And he needed to recognize that. And because he wasn't recognizing that, God had a problem with him. And so he does this. And then in verse 34, it says, "After this time had passed, I, Nebuchadnezzar, looked up to heaven. My sanity returned, and I praised and worshiped the Most High and honored the one who lives forever. His rule is everlasting, and his kingdom is eternal. All the people of the earth are nothing compared to him. He does as he pleases among the angels of heaven and among the people of the earth. No one can stop him or say to him, 'What do you mean by doing these things?' When my sanity returned to me, so did my honor and glory and kingdom. My advisors and nobles sought me out, and I was restored as head of my kingdom with greater honor, even greater honor than before. Now I can, Nebuchadnezzar, praise and glorify and honor the King of heaven. All his acts are just and true, and he is able to humble the proud." And so that's the thing. This chapter, Daniel chapter 4, is a testimony of how a proud king over maybe the most powerful kingdom and the most beautiful city ever was humbled before God and came to faith in him. I can't say that 100% sure, but it seems from these words that Nebuchadnezzar writes of himself. He says, I, Nebuchadnezzar, am now declaring to you these things took place so that I could understand who God truly was. So God did some amazing things in Nebuchadnezzar's life so he could come to a point of faith in God and understanding that he isn't great, he isn't proud, or he isn't amazing. God is amazing. And so that's obviously a great lesson for us. Number one, that God cares even about his Babylonian king Nebuchadnezzar. He's not a Jew. He's not somebody from God's chosen people. He's just a random dude in Babylon. God still cares about him, and in some ways blessed him with Daniel, with Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, and then blessed him with this experience so that he could eventually come to faith in him. Because 7 years of acting like a cow is better than eternity in hell. And so God blessed Nebuchadnezzar, and he gained wisdom and understanding that yes, God is greater. And verse 35 or whatever, as it says, all the people of the earth are nothing compared to him. He does as he pleases among the angels of heaven and among the people of the earth. No one can stop him or say to him, what do you mean by doing these things? And you might get to the point where you go, and this is where it kind of comes into here. We're already at 21 minutes. I want to wrap things up here. You might, again, be very discouraged about what's happening with the coronavirus. And you might say to yourself or ask even God, and it's okay to ask him. It's okay to pray to him and bring our concerns to him. But remember this truth that Nebuchadnezzar found out the hard way, that you and I can learn the easy way from Nebuchadnezzar's testimony, that we as people, no one can stop God from doing whatever. And we can't even, I mean, ultimately, we're not even really able to even ask him, why are you doing these things? Because he's God. He's above us. He's so much greater than us. And he does have a plan. And that's the, again, I know I talked about this yesterday, but the fear factor that's going around right now is concerning to me in the sense that this is an opportunity for us to trust God and as believers to show our trust in God, to come to as often as possible say, I know the coronavirus is fearful. It's weird. I don't know about my job. I don't know about my parents' job. If you're a student, but continue to trust God and tell people that you trust God rather than just, sitting in your house. Get out there, text people encouraging words, telling them that God's got this, especially if they're afraid, if they're scared about what's going on. And I can't blame anybody for being afraid that things are, that to be afraid, because a lot of people in the news are saying a lot of dire things, but they're forgetting. And it took a pillow guy the other day at the White House to finally say that God is in control and to look to God over this. So learn from Nebuchadnezzar's lesson that you would continue to trust in God rather than yourself, and just humble yourself before God and continue to pray to Him, asking Him for help. If I ask for prayer requests with a few people that are still on here right now, I'm sure I would get things like, I hope school still happens. I know Jaden mentioned prom the other day, graduation for seniors, camp would at least happen in July. I mean, there's all kinds of things that are up in the air right now, but don't forget to trust God. Don't lean on your own abilities. And that'll be easy. Like in a month or two, people on TV are going to be touting like, oh, Dr. Fauci saved us all, or, whatever. And I don't mean to be disrespectful to the doctors and the nurses who are working very hard in the medical field right now to help people who are sick. But God is the one who is going to solve this. And we need to give him credit. And if his people don't, then who will? Maybe a random king who didn't know anything about God would or will, but hopefully his people also, you and I, will as well. So with that, I hope you guys, I'll see you tomorrow. Tomorrow is the fast, if you do that with us. So be in prayer and fasting tomorrow about this. And then hopefully Monday night, we'll have our Zoom game time. So with that, you have a good one. Sorry this went so long.